This is absolutely explosive. The United States Department of Justice just released 3.5 million pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, according to CBS News, ABC News, and CNBC, all reporting this story within the last 48 hours. This massive document dump includes 180,000 images and 2,000 videos. Names of the rich and powerful are all over these files. President Trump is mentioned, former President Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Elon Musk, billionaire Steve Tisch, who owns the New York Giants. And according to CBS News reporting published just hours ago, the files contain shocking photographs of Prince Andrew on all fours over a woman. But here's what makes this story even bigger. Congressional Democrats are now saying, according to CNBC and multiple sources, that the DOJ has only released about half of the files that exist. There are potentially 6 million pages total, and the Justice Department is withholding 3 million of them. Stay with me because this is the biggest document release related to a sex trafficking case in American history, and what's in these files could shake the foundations of power in this country. Welcome to Capital Pulse, where we bring you verified investigative reporting without fear or favor. Before we dive into this bombshell, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this story is developing by the hour and more revelations are coming. I'm going to walk you through what's actually in these files based on reporting from CBS News, ABC News, CNBC, NBC News, and official Department of Justice statements. This is documented, verified information from credible sources about one of the darkest scandals in modern American history. Let's start with the basic facts about this release. According to the Department of Justice's official press release published on January 30th, the DOJ published over 3 million additional pages responsive to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That's a law that was signed by President Trump on November 19, 2025. The law requires the government to open its files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his confidant Ghislaine Maxwell. This latest release brings the total production to nearly 3.5 million pages. And according to the DOJ statement, more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images are included. Now, who is Jeffrey Epstein for anyone who somehow doesn't know? Epstein was a millionaire financier who cultivated relationships with presidents, princes, billionaires, and celebrities. He was arrested in August 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges involving underage girls. According to all news reports, Epstein killed himself in a New York jail cell in August 2019, 1 month after being indicted. His former girlfriend and alleged co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted on sex trafficking charges and is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. The scope of their crimes involved trafficking and sexually abusing young girls, some as young as 14, over a period of decades. The Epstein Files Transparency Act that mandated this release was pushed hard by congressional Democrats, particularly Representative Ro Khanna from California, who sponsored the bill. According to CNBC, Khanna is now arguing that what the DOJ released is only about half of what actually exists. CNBC quoted Khanna saying, quote, "The DOJ said it identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, but is releasing only about 3.5 million after review and redactions. This raises questions as to why the rest are being withheld," and that's a sitting member of Congress saying the Justice Department is hiding half the evidence. Let me walk you through some of the specific revelations that news organizations have found in these files, because this is where it gets really disturbing and really important. CBS News has been examining the files and publishing findings on their live blog. One of the most shocking items, according to CBS reporting published today, February 1st, is photographs of former Prince Andrew. I'm going to read directly from CBS News reporting here. Quote, "The latest trove of files included photographs of former Prince Andrew kneeling on all fours over a woman lying on the floor. The files do not offer any context for the photos, and it is unclear where and when they were taken." CBS notes that Prince Andrew, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has long been dogged by his links to Epstein. He has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing but stepped back from royal duties because of the scandal. There are also extensive email communications in the files. CBS News reported on emails between Epstein and various high-profile figures. One email from October 2009 was from Peggy Siegel, described as a publicist and New York socialite, to Epstein. According to CBS, Siegel wrote that she just left Ghislaine Maxwell's house where an after-party for an unnamed film was being held. The email said, and I'm quoting CBS's reporting, quote, "Bill Clinton and Jeff Bezos were there." This shows the kind of social circles Epstein and Maxwell moved in, rubbing elbows with a former president and one of the world's richest men. Now, it's crucial to note, and this is important, so I'm going to say it clearly, CBS News, CNBC, and the Department of Justice have all emphasized that mentions of prominent figures in these files, including President Trump, Bill Clinton, and Elon Musk, do not mean these individuals are tied to any wrongdoing. Being mentioned in documents or being at social events that Epstein attended doesn't automatically implicate someone in his crimes. That said, the files do show how extensively connected Epstein was to the most powerful people in America and the world. CNBC published detailed reporting on some of the Epstein-Trump connections found in the files. According to CNBC, there are emails and communications showing Epstein's interactions with people in Trump's orbit. One particularly interesting email exchange that CNBC highlighted involved Steve Bannon, who served as Trump's chief strategist. According to CNBC's reporting, there's an email where Epstein complained about something being delayed. The email said, and I'm quoting CNBC here, quote, "Should have been done months ago, too old." And Bannon replied, quote, "Can you get rid of Powell or really get rid of Mnuchin?" referring to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and then Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. This email shows Epstein apparently had communication channels with senior Trump administration officials and felt comfortable asking them about replacing top economic policymakers. Interestingly, CNBC noted in their reporting that Trump just recently named Kevin Warsh to succeed Powell after spending the past year attacking Powell for not cutting interest rates quickly enough. So there's an Epstein email from years ago discussing getting rid of Powell, and now Trump is actually doing it. The connection there is unclear, but certainly raises questions. CBS News also reported on emails discussing Epstein's incarceration and death. The files contain emails between investigators discussing Epstein's final note. According to CBS, one email states that Epstein's last note, quote, "does not appear to be a suicide note." That's significant because the official story is that Epstein killed himself, but conspiracy theories have swirled for years that he was murdered to protect powerful people. These files don't definitively prove or disprove those theories, but they show that investigators themselves noted his final note didn't seem like a suicide note. There are also emails and communications involving Ghislaine Maxwell during her imprisonment. CBS reported that some files contain Maxwell's grievances about her incarceration conditions. Maxwell has consistently maintained she's being treated unfairly in prison, though she was convicted on serious sex trafficking charges. CNBC highlighted emails involving billionaire Steve Tisch, who co-owns the New York Giants football team. According to CNBC, Tisch emailed back and forth with Epstein several times in 2013, and in some messages they referenced women. CNBC quoted one email where Tisch wrote to Epstein that he had lunch with one of Epstein's assistant's friends, describing her as a, quote, "very sweet girl," and asked if Epstein knew anything about her. This shows Epstein was facilitating introductions between wealthy and powerful men and young women, which, given what we know about his activities, raises very disturbing questions about what he was actually doing. Now let's talk about the political fight over these documents, because this is where it gets really contentious. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche held a press conference about the release, and according to ABC News, Blanche specifically said the department, quote, "didn't protect President Trump in these files." ABC quoted Blanche saying that notable individuals and politicians were not redacted in the release. The implication is that if Trump's name appears in files, they released it rather than covering it up to protect him. But Democrats in Congress are not buying that the DOJ has been fully transparent. According to multiple news sources, including CNBC and CBS, congressional Democrats are arguing the DOJ has only released about half the files that exist. Representative Ro Khanna told CNBC he was looking to see whether Friday's release included FBI interviews with victims, a draft indictment, and information prosecutors collected during a 2007 investigation into Epstein in Florida. That Florida investigation, which occurred during the George W. Bush administration, resulted in what many consider a sweetheart plea deal that let Epstein avoid serious federal charges. Democrats want to know what the FBI knew back then and why Epstein was allowed to escape justice for so long. The House Oversight Committee has also issued a separate subpoena to Attorney General Pam Bondi for the files without redactions, but according to CNBC, that subpoena has not been fulfilled. There's also a letter from Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, demanding access to unredacted files. The letter, dated January 31st, says that committee members need to review unredacted documents before Attorney General Bondi's appearance at a February 11th hearing. Raskin's letter says, and I'm reading from the document, quote, "The DOJ said it identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, but after releasing only about half of them, including over 200,000 pages that DOJ redacted or withheld, says strangely that it has fully complied with the law." So you've got a fundamental disagreement. The Justice Department says they've complied with the law by releasing 3.5 million pages. Democrats say there are 6 million pages total, and the DOJ is only releasing half. Who's telling the truth? We don't know yet, but it's a major point of contention. There's also controversy about victim privacy. According to ABC News reporting published just hours ago, attorneys for alleged victims of Epstein are urging federal judges in New York to order the immediate takedown of the Justice Department's Epstein Files website. The victims' lawyers argue that despite redaction efforts, some victims can still be identified from the documents and images, and that this violates their privacy and potentially endangers them. ABC reports that this legal fight is ongoing. The Department of Justice addressed the victim privacy issue in their press release. According to the DOJ statement, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York employed a special review protocol to ensure compliance with a court order requiring certification that no victim identifying information would be produced unredacted. The DOJ said more than 500 attorneys and reviewers contributed to the effort. They claim they provided clear instructions that redactions were limited to protecting victims and their families. The DOJ statement specifically said, quote, "Some pornographic images, whether commercial or not, were redacted, given the department treated all women in those images as victims, but clearly victims' attorneys don't think those protections went far enough." Let's talk about what these files actually contain in terms of categories. According to the Department of Justice press release, the files were collected from 5 primary sources. First, the Florida and New York criminal cases against Epstein. Second, the New York case against Ghislaine Maxwell. Third, the New York cases investigating Epstein's death. Fourth, the Florida case investigating a former butler of Epstein who allegedly had a black book with names. And fifth, multiple FBI investigations and an Office of Inspector General investigation into how Epstein was able to kill himself while in federal custody. The sheer volume is staggering, 3.5 million pages. To put that in perspective, if you printed all of that out, you'd need multiple moving trucks to haul the paper. 180,000 images, 2,000 videos. This isn't a small leak. This is potentially the largest document release related to a single criminal case in modern American history. But here's what's interesting about what's not in the files, at least according to what Democrats are saying. CNBC reported that Representative Khanna wants to see FBI interviews with victims, and it's not clear if those are included. He wants to see a draft indictment, which would show what federal prosecutors were originally planning to charge Epstein with before he died. And he wants information from the 2007 Florida investigation that resulted in that controversial plea deal. If those documents aren't in the current release, that's hugely significant because they could contain the most damning information about who knew what and when. There's also the question of what happened to Epstein's notorious black books and flight logs. Over the years, various versions of Epstein's contact information and private jet passenger manifests have leaked. Those documents showed him flying powerful people to his private island in the Caribbean, but it's not clear if the complete official versions of those documents are in this DOJ release or if they're part of the 3 million pages that Democrats say are being withheld. Now, I want to address the broader implications of all this. Why does it matter that these files are being released now, years after Epstein's death and Maxwell's conviction? Several reasons. First, accountability. Epstein and Maxwell didn't operate in a vacuum. They had enablers, people who looked the other way, people who facilitated their activities, and potentially people who participated in the abuse. If powerful individuals helped Epstein escape justice or covered up his crimes, the public has a right to know. Second, there's the question of whether there are ongoing investigations. If Epstein had co-conspirators who haven't been charged, these files could provide evidence for new prosecutions. Third, the victims deserve the truth to come out, even if it can't undo the harm they suffered. The political dimension is also significant. Both Democrats and Republicans have called for transparency about Epstein's connections to powerful people. But there's inherent tension. Trump signed the law requiring these files to be released, which his supporters say shows he has nothing to hide. But Democrats argue the Trump Justice Department is still withholding half the documents. Who benefits politically from full disclosure versus partial disclosure? It depends on whose names are most prominently featured in the files that haven't been released yet. Social media is absolutely exploding over this document release. The Epstein conspiracy theories have been circulating for years, and now there's 3.5 million pages of official documents for people to comb through. Some of what people will find in there will confirm their suspicions, some will be taken out of context, some will spawn new conspiracy theories. It's a researcher's dream and a fact-checker's nightmare. CBS News noted in their reporting that the Department of Justice said it erred on the side of over-collecting materials. That means they grabbed everything potentially related to Epstein and Maxwell, even tangentially, and then sorted through it later. The DOJ said any materials not produced fall into specific categories: duplicate documents, items that are not part of the case files and were completely unrelated, and materials withheld to protect victims. But Democrats don't trust that explanation. They think there are documents being withheld that should be public, and given the history of powerful people seemingly protecting Epstein from consequences for decades, that skepticism is not unreasonable. Here's what we know for certain. Jeffrey Epstein trafficked and sexually abused young girls. Ghislaine Maxwell helped him do it and was convicted. Epstein died in federal custody under suspicious circumstances that have never been fully explained. Powerful people from across the political spectrum knew Epstein and socialized with him. Some of those people may have known what he was doing and said nothing. Some may have benefited from his crimes, and the full truth still has not come out. These 3.5 million pages are a step toward transparency. But if congressional Democrats are right that another 3 million pages are being withheld, then we're only getting half the story. And in a case this important, involving crimes this serious and people this powerful, half the story is not enough. What happens next? Expect more revelations as journalists dig through these files. Expect more political fighting between Democrats who want everything released and the Justice Department claiming they've complied with the law. Expect potential lawsuits from victims who say their privacy is being violated. And expect possibly new criminal investigations if the files contain evidence of crimes that haven't been prosecuted. This story is far from over. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. But the web of power, money, and exploitation they created extended far beyond just the two of them. These files are a window into that world, and America deserves to see the full picture, not just the half the government decides we're allowed to see. I'll continue following this story as more information comes out. Make sure you're subscribed to Capital Pulse and have notifications on so you don't miss updates. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think the Justice Department is withholding files to protect powerful people? Should everything be released even if it compromises victim privacy? And do you believe the official story about how Epstein died? I read every comment. Hit that like button if you found this reporting valuable, and I'll see you in the next video with more breaking developments. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and demand the truth.